So I agree with you, Alexi, and that's part of what I hope to share. Um, at the, I want to say at the beginning and then at the end, I'll come back to this. Um, the best way to learn about research is to be involved in it. And so when you're starting off, of course, you don't know what you're doing. You wouldn't know what you were doing, so you'd wander around it. And the best way then to start off in it, be doing it, is to be part of a team of people that are doing something, doing a research project. So at the end of this session, when we're talking about the publishing of research, I'm going to offer um, the chance to be part of something at the ground level and then learn. So from that, you would learn everything because the project involves coalescing around ideas, research questions, putting together the plan, the method, carrying it out, and then writing it up, presenting it and at conferences, getting it published, the whole thing from beginning to end. And I'll tell you more about that after we talk about publishing in particular. Okay, so let's see. Oh, need to do this. All right. Just run a little bit. Okay. Everybody see that okay? All right. So this is the necessity and process of publishing research projects. The field of Gestalt therapy needs more people doing research. It's been that way for a long time. It's starting to come around, but we just need a lot more people doing research. Sometimes a person will sense that and they will commit to enduring the pain of pivoting to some extent from just doing therapy or coaching and to learning how to do research and then actually getting involved doing it. And I say pain because I think it is painful. I remember what it felt like to me when I realized um, if if Gestalt research was going to get done, the Gestalt therapists were going to have to do it because we lacked the professors, we lacked programs at major universities that taught Gestalt therapy, and so who was going to do this research? Those people were off chasing other kinds of interests, other kinds of questions. We needed to catch up to that general research field in psychotherapy, and so there was nobody but the Gestalt therapists ourselves who were going to have to do it. And then I felt convicted. Well, that means me. I can't just tell other people to go do it and not be willing to do it myself. So I didn't get into doing research or involved in the advocacy of research because that was my main interest. No way. And the math that you have to do to analyze the results, I've communicated to people whenever I can that I think um, I'm dysfunctional in terms of math. I think I must have hit my head or something like that, and it just doesn't work. I don't do math very well. So it was challenging, but okay, if if we're going to get it done, then I have to be part of doing it. And that was painful, painful, very painful. Um, Especially when in the early days it was like nobody else, I wouldn't say nobody, but very few people were interested in trying to get research done. So not only was it that I felt the pain of having to pull away from my first choice, which was doing therapy, to spend some time in trying to get research done. But then when I tried, I felt like I was trying to push this giant boulder up a hill, and it was just frustrating. So I commiserate if there's, and I cheer for people these days who say, okay, like I did, they will get involved with doing research. However, unless that same person, the same us, who pivoted to do research, pivots again to learning how to get that research published, it's all for naught. It's a waste. And why is that? Well, that's what we'll get into. Today, we're going to talk about the needs and processes of getting our research projects published. So there's a need, there's a place to do it, there's a process, what it takes to do it, and then I'm going to come around to what I shared at the beginning, which is this real life example and invitation, actually. Okay, the need to publish research. So it occurs to me that maybe people have been, some of you have been published. I'm curious, how many people have been published already? Alexi, I see your hand. Um, Anybody else? I can't tell.
Maria
Okay,
also.
say what?
Maria also was
Okay,
published.
okay. So there is a difference. I mean, there's publishing and then there's publishing. Okay, well, that's interesting. I have just fooled around and lost the slides. Okay, bear with me.
And we see a slide.
They do?
Yeah, no need to publish research. The need to publish research, sorry.
Oh, okay.
This is the
So
slide.
what I did is I just expanded all of you, so I lost the slides.
Maybe you can stop share your screen and begin it again.
Okay. Okay, that's where I'm at. Okay, and now we do this. Do this. Yeah, thanks. Okay. So there's a difference between publishing like theoretical papers or even like fictional kinds of accounts, or what they call narrative nonfiction, which is like things that really happened. So it's not just totally making things up, but you're doing it in a narrative style. There's a difference between that kind of a thing, or even publishing what used to be called a case study. Case studies have taken on a little more heft than they used to, but they used to be just a therapist kind of almost telling the story, like, this is what happened when I met with my client, and this is how I worked, and I did this, and then I did that, and then this is the thing that I think is really important about doing therapy is doing this, and kind of thing like that. So it's just an anecdotal version of how that person was working. And when we first started advocating research, the Gestalt therapist would say, I don't need research to tell me that Gestalt therapy works. I know it works because my patients have told me. I can see the changes in their lives. And so that's the kind of thing that would get published. There's a difference between that kind of publishing and the kind of publishing that I'm talking about here and calling research. When we talked about the different kinds of research that you can do, there's something called a research that's considered research design. It's more rigorous, it's more organized, systematic. So that's what we're talking about here. And going back to the start of trying to get research or advocating for research, people realized that we were being left out and marginalized, we being Gestalt therapists, because we didn't have an evidence base. The evidence-based movement had taken hold. It's virtually across the board in all kinds of disciplines and areas of culture. People want to make sure that what they're doing or what they're purchasing works. So how do you make sure that it works? Well, you do research, you create evidence that shows it works. Okay. So then, in order to assure that the field in psychotherapy was becoming more and more evidence-based, people created best practices committees. I don't know if you're familiar with these kinds of things, but in the United States, the American Psychological Association has these best practices committees, and they're committees dedicated to a particular kind of psychological disorder. And the committee, what they do is they review research. How do you establish a best practice to treat a particular disorder? You review all of the research that's available, and then you identify, well, CBT is qualified because it's got lots of research. These days, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, is almost challenging CBT for the amount of research behind it. So that's qualified. And then there might be a few others that are qualified because why? Well, because they have research. The committee was able to find research articles that would support that provided the evidence to support calling that particular approach an evidence-based approach. That whole thing is really scary to me. If there's a group of people that are sitting down somewhere in a room getting together and saying, well, which ones are going to be approved and which ones aren't, that comes with a fair amount of power and consequence to the field. So what do I mean? And what's happening in the United States is there's a drift toward only licensing people who practice an evidence-based approach. And then when you relicense or when you do continuing education, you have to show that what you're keeping up with is an evidence-based approach. So if you run afoul of that and you practice some fringy kind of a thing, then you run the risk of losing your license. That's the extreme. So these committees and then the resulting consequence to the field is all based on published research. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you know how many research do have psychoanalysis, and do they have many research or not? Because they also a bit similar to Gestalt in humanistic approach. I mean,
Yes. They were okay. Now, all that I just said about the need for research, published research, now consider the field of psychoanalysis. The field of psychoanalysis is well organized and entrenched at the university level, has been for a long time. So it is not as politically easy to shove them off to the side and say you can't get licensed. So so without research, published research, they have been able to hang on more easily than Gestalt therapy, therapist in the field of Gestalt therapy. In the United States, what it's like in other countries, it varies by the political climate and all. So, but it can't go on like that forever because the evidence-based movement is solid. That's a given of the field from now on, I believe. And so there's no going back or no going away from the need, even for psychoanalysis, to do research. And they know that. They have done some. And they've done some good research. Anyway, so let's see. So the committee works according to how many research projects of various kinds have been published. And I don't have the exact figures, but it's some for lots of different kinds of things. But what they're really wanting to know, and this all comes down to, does it work? Is it effective? And remember, I've emphasized these two words, effectiveness and efficacy. Well, the committees are looking for efficacy studies. Efficacy studies show that the particular form of therapy used caused the change. Wasn't just a coincidence, didn't just correlate. This changed and then that changed, but we don't know if this caused that to change. No, they want causation. That's what efficacy studies are, and that's what a group efficacy study is called, a random controlled trial, RCT. So the committee said you need two of those. You need two independent RCTs. Let's take anxiety. The committee working on anxiety, I'm making something up here. The committee working on anxiety would meet and they would say, well, in our looking around at all the research, did we find at least two RCTs for CBT? Oh, we found hundreds. Okay. Did we find at least two RCTs for ACT? Oh, we've got plenty. Did we find at least two RCTs for Gestalt therapy? Crickets, because they didn't find it. Now, part of that is they didn't know where to look for it because they're not keyed in already to Gestalt therapy. That's next week. How do we advocate for Gestalt therapy? But it takes at least two RCTs for the committees of a committee like this to venture out and risk saying, well, we regard that Gestalt therapy can likely be considered an evidence-based approach for the treatment of anxiety. That's a group efficacy study, which is not very feasible for the typical person in the field of Gestalt therapy. So we, as a field of people, early researchers, we advocated the single case timed series design, which is an efficacy study on an individual level. I said this before when we went over research design, but it's related here to this business about how the best practice committees work. So it takes at least 3 independent single case time series studies to suggest that, oh, yeah, we've got efficacy, we've got evidence here that shows that Gestalt therapy can cause positive change with regard to the treatment of anxiety. Independent studies. That does not mean that the same researchers, the same research team did 3 different studies, 3 different patients. No, it means here's one research team doing it, here's another research team doing it, here's another research team doing it. And they're not cooperating together in one giant study. They're all independent, working independently. Okay, so 2 independent RCTs or 3 independent single case timed efficacy studies. Published, all published. All of these things have to be published. Okay. Why? Because that's how the committee finds them. But on another level, the need to publish goes beyond that, actually, I think. On another level, unless a project has been published, virtually no one knows about it, nor benefits from it. So let's just say a group of people said, at an institute, for instance, they wanted to do program evaluation. So program evaluation is research. So they created a research project to see to what extent trainers can be domineering or oppressive, abusive in their training. Put another way, to what extent do trainers create shame in the trainees by however they act? So at our institute, our trainers, so they conduct the research, they find out, oh, no, we're not really creating shame in our trainees. Yes, some people will experience shame, but it's not an overwhelming number, and there's no reason for us to believe from the research that we are creating shame in these people. And so they've got their answer. They've helped themselves through research to make their training institute, frankly, a better institute, but they don't publish it. That helped them, but doesn't help people outside of their institute. And they can go to a conference and they can say, oh, well, no, that doesn't, people are talking about possible shaming at training institutes, and they could say, well, we don't do that. And they could be sure that that's not happening at their institute. But unless they share their research, other people don't benefit from that. So how do you share it? Well, you publish it. It has to be published. Then other people can benefit from it. And related to that is this last point here, is that if it's not published, there's no cumulative effect of one researcher or one research team building upon the work of another. That's the way research traditions grow. Research itself is never complete and absolute result. There's always degrees of error. There's always things that need to be tweaked. There's always something else that needs to be done. Typical research paper will end with, and this is what else needs to be done. Why? Because the research suggests there's more to be done. There's more to be learned. We never get it all. So it takes, in a research tradition, it is an evolving thing. And one researcher will build upon what another researcher has done. That's just the way it grows. And the Gestalt research tradition is off the ground now. That's great. But it needs to continue growing and evolving. And the way that it's going to do that, partly through people presenting at conferences, but how many people can spend the amount of money it takes to go travel all over the world and attend these conferences, right? So the best way is to publish the research. Then other people can build on it, and the research tradition grows, and Gestalt therapy becomes more viable in the eyes of other people. Any questions or thoughts? Okay, so that's the need for publishing. Now, where do you publish? The place to publish. The best place to publish research is in peer-reviewed journals. So the typical peer-reviewed journal is a team in itself. So there are research teams working to get the research done and out there through publishing. And then there are publishing teams that are comprised of practitioners and researchers too, yes, but they form a special team dedicated to support a particular journal. And the team is comprised of an executive editor at the head, and then associate editors, usually a handful of them, maybe 5 to 7, something like that. And then a further editorial board, which you can have as many as like 20 different recognized people in the field, whatever the field is for that journal. And how this team operates is that the people submit an article for consideration to the journal. It's usually sent to the executive editor, the person at the top, and then that person sends it, asks for reviewers, asks people from the editorial board if they would review the article. And they do, and the reviewers are blind to who wrote the article. So the executive editor takes out the identifying information about who wrote it, and then gives this de-identified article to probably 3 members of the editorial board. These people, there's a set way of reviewing according to
Sorry, could you please repeat the last phrase about the mechanism, because I've a little bit lost the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the executive editor gives the de-identified article that has been submitted to probably 3 members of the editorial board, and those people review or look over the article. You know, they look at it critically. Is this article well written? Is this article use good research design? Is their methodology sound? Are their conclusions reasonable? That kind of thing. And also, is it well written? I mean, just the art of writing. And research articles are usually what I would call more serious. They're more academic in the languaging and the sentence structure and things like that. They're not as colloquial. They're not like, "Hey, buddy, what'd you do last night?" kind of stuff. It's not like that. It's not. It's more formal. So they look at all of that kind of thing, the reviewers, and they use the review template that the journal is using so that it's systematic. The review is systematic. So they check this or they check that, or they use a Likert scale and say between 1 and 5 or 1 or 7, like it, don't like it. And then these are my reasons. Accept it as is. Accept it with a condition of changes being made. Reject it. Those are the usual choices. And then there's a place for comments so the reviewer can flesh these checkbox responses out a little bit and say, I really enjoyed this, or I really didn't like that, or I disagree with this, or whatever the comment would be. And so they send that back to the executive editor, and the executive editor makes a decision. The executive editor can say, like, if all 3 reviewers said, no, this is not up to snuff, it's not really good enough for our journal, we have a standard for our journal, so no, we have to reject. If all 3 of them reject it, chances are the executive editor is not going to override that. They're going to tell the author, no, I'm sorry, you'll have to go back and work on it more. Or submit it to somewhere else, but not going to fly as is. If, say, 2 of the reviewers had questions, like they would say, oh, accept it with changes. And in the recommendations, they would have said what the changes are that they were recommending. And then the third one say reject it. Then probably the executive editor, especially if the executive editor thought the article was worthwhile, would tell the author, we're interested in accepting the verbiage might be changed from one journal and editor to another. We're interested in the article, but you need to make these changes. So they send it back. So this back and forth about accept with changes can go on. There can be several rounds. Okay, so the author changes it, sends it back in, it's resubmitted, and the editor goes, okay, fine, it's good now. Or the editor goes, well, you didn't really. No, that's not quite good enough. Now I'll give you another chance. So try again, something like that. I mean, there's this back and forth that takes place based on the reviews. So now you get to the place finally where the editor says, all right, we accept your article. Now the author might think, great, it's done. I'm done. I wrote my thing. They're going to publish it. Oh, no. No, it's not done yet. So what happens now is the executive editor assigns what is sometimes called an action editor to work with the author, bringing this particular article completely to the point of publication. So the action editor is often one of the associate editors. Remember I said like 5 to 7 or something like that. So these are really experts, more expert in the field, more accomplished usually in publishing. They work with the author or authors to get the final product ready for publishing. And that's another back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So when you look at the research article, when in its final form in the journal, you'll often see something where it says first received, and they'll give the date. That's the date the thing was first received, way back when it first came to the executive editor, before they went through all of that stuff. So if you look at the distance between the date of the first received and the date of publication, you get an idea about how long it takes to get a peer-reviewed research article in print in a journal. It takes a while. So that's another reason why I say pain, because it is a pain. It is really a pain. What is much more easy is to go to a journal, find a journal that doesn't operate with peer review, and you only have to please probably the executive editor. Bing, you're published before you know it. Then there's open source kind of stuff. That's another thing that's where you're paying for you're paying money to be published, actually, is what it is. I'm not going to talk about that. So the best place to be published is in a peer-reviewed journal, because people know those articles have been vetted. They have been through the mill. They're more important. Yes, Alexei.
I have a question about Gestalt journals, because as far as I know, there is no Gestalt journals which in Scopus index, and it means that if I want to publish some Gestalt research, I will publish it not in Gestalt journals, but in some another like psychological journals or something like that. And I want to ask why our journals not in Scopus? Is it so difficult to be there, or some other reasons?
I'll get to that. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or anything? Okay. So, so the requirements of a peer-reviewed journal are more rigorous, and they produce an overall better product, really. So the peer-reviewed journals are more esteemed. Okay, so it is better to publish in peer-reviewed journals that are listed. Here's this thing. Listed in established collections of such things as, and I cite here the American Psychological Association's PsycInfo database. And there are others, and Alexei mentioned Scopus, and there's a number of others. Okay, why is that? If you were a committee, a best practice committee, and you had a job to survey as many research articles as you could, how would you find them? you'd go to these places that list them. That's where you go. So you want to have the journal listed in one of these places. And this is so they can be found, cited in other studies, and they spread their influence. To have the that's so there's a degree of there's a range here, right? Write the article, do the research just for us at our institute, publish the research, but publish the research in a peer-reviewed journal, but publish the research in a peer-reviewed journal that's listed in a well-known literature database. That is what is the best thing. Let's see. I'm going to skip over to this. Here's examples of journals that are peer-reviewed, like I just talked about. They're largely probably, I think, APA journals, but there are European journals. There are different, there are peer-reviewed journals from different countries all over the world. Here you will notice one called Gestalt Review. Gestalt Review is peer-reviewed journal that is listed in the PsycInfo database. The PsycInfo database from APA routinely lists, and so a listing will have the title, who the researchers were, the date of the publication, and it'll have the abstract. That's what the listing will show. So you can know who's doing it, when it happened, and basically what they did. And the abstract is going to show what the question was, what the some of the methodology, very brief, and the results, very brief, so that people can understand, oh, that's what these people did. That's what it was about. So Gestalt Review is listed that way. The British Gestalt Journal, which is a highly esteemed Gestalt journal, and it is peer-reviewed, is not listed in the PsycInfo database. I don't know if it's listed. Oh, well, according to Alexei, it wouldn't be in Scopus either, because that's what you said. No Gestalt journals there. So that is not good. So what's happening? If there's anything worthwhile in the British Gestalt Journal, it's probably just going to be known by Gestalt people. There's not going to be, if you publish a research article in the British Gestalt Journal, you ever heard the phrase, you're preaching to the choir? Yeah. The choir is always in church. They always hear the preacher. The preacher's not outside in the community center standing on the street corner preaching. He's preaching to the choir. That's what happens in the British Gestalt Journal. Now, I say that, I could be corrected. Somebody correct me, fine. So these are some journals that have, when you go and look at them, you can see some listings here. It's all blurred out, but you can see the associate editors. See them listed right here and right here. So Alexei mentioned what do you do if you want to get the research known out in the world, outside of preaching to the choir, outside of just known to Gestalt people? Because part of this whole thing is, I would use a spiritual term here, evangelistic. Do you know what I mean by evangelistic? Evangelistic is going out into the world to spread your message in order to try and convert people to believing it. Yeah. So why would we want to spread the news about Gestalt therapy? So we can have more people become Gestalt therapists, so that the field of Gestalt therapy could thrive and grow and become more viable. So we do publish in journals on purpose, aside from the fact that Gestalt journals are not listed in an abundance in PsycInfo or Scopus, evidently. We do seek on purpose to be published outside of Gestalt therapy journals. So which ones? Which ones to pick? Psychotherapy is one. We've got some people have been published in psychotherapy. Some people, and obviously humanistic psychologists, we've got a number of people have been published there. The Journal of Theoretical and Philosophical Psychology. That's a great place if you have a theoretical paper or idea. You can get published there without doing the research. So where does that fit into the research tradition? Because research is done on theoretical ideas. It is to investigate the theory that somebody has and see if the theory holds up in the practical world. So in the flow, in the workflow, say, of a given project or an interest, a person might publish in either Humanistic Psychologist or the Journal of Theoretical and Philosophical Psychology something about the theory of Gestalt therapy. And then they create a research project, go through all of the thing that I just talked about, and they publish in psychotherapy to show that there is, evidence that the theory holds water. It's right. That makes sense? Okay. So the process I've already actually gone through it, but let's just go through it again. So just to make sure that I've covered it here, okay? So we've looked at, if we go back through here, we've looked at the need to publish research. Then we've looked at the place to publish research. And now I want to emphasize what is the process of the publishing. Complete the project, the research project. Choose a journal that fits the subject best. You might even know somebody at the journal. Like I went to a conference, it was called Psychology and the Other Conference. It was in Boston. It was put together to bring together psychoanalysts with other kinds of folks, other Gestalt people too, around the idea of self and other. It was related to Emmanuel Levinas's theories and Husserl's theories, a lot of philosophy, that kind of a thing. Anyway, I did a presentation there, and then I sat in on some other people's presentations, and I read. So I had to pick one. What do I want to see? And I read this abstract for the presentation about a guy who worked with bonobo apes. And, so these are like big apes. And what he would do is he was working intersubjectively with bonobo apes. So it's a non-verbal process of connecting intersubjectively with an ape. And he would go and sit at the big glass viewing window where the apes lived. And eventually apes would come over and they would interact with him. And so he was presenting his findings of doing that and talking about it philosophically, referring to the philosophers that are big in the theory of Gestalt therapy. So I thought, I want to hear that. So I went and listened to him, and then I started talking to him after the presentation and invited him to be part of the upcoming research conference that I was organizing at the time. And so he did come, and that was Scott Churchill, who has since become even more involved with Gestalt people, Margarita Loeb's group, and so forth. He was the executive editor at Humanistic Psychologist. And so meeting him created this opportunity, I know you kind of a thing. It's not that he gave me any favors or anything like that, but it's nice if you know somebody on the editorial board of one of these journals. So that's also part of next week's or the last session, networking. Okay, so you choose the journal that best fits the subject of your research, and then you submit the best. Even though you're going to go through it, you're going to go through the back and forth. Don't be sloppy about the thing that you submit. Do the absolute best job you can. Submit it to the journal. It'll be reviewed. The reviewers will talk to the editor. There's suggestions. You go back and forth. So you have to be patient. Have to endure. This is like an endurance trial. If rejected, enlist another writer's help to try it again. So here's let's talk about being rejected. Don't we all hope that we can be rejected? No, we do not. We do not want to be rejected. And you can't help but take it personally when you put a lot of work into submitting the best possible manuscript you can, and then it's rejected. So what do? Do you just say, well, I give up? No, you don't do that, because you put a lot of effort already into creating a research project that you think is worth something, and so you don't give up. So you can do two different things, basically. You can try a different journal. So you just take the article you wrote and you just send it to a different journal. That's one thing. Or you can take the article you wrote and send it to, if you can find another writer who's knowledgeable enough in the area to read it and give you some honest suggestions. What will that mean? What's going to happen if you do that? You're just going to get an opinion. You're just going to get the opinion of this other writer, who is another human being and is going to have their own perspective and their own way of writing that article if they were going to be writing that article. So don't take what they say as just like as soon as you hear it, oh, I must do this. No. Take what they say appreciatively, park the whole thing, set your article and those comments aside, go fishing, go play, go spend some time, get the whole thing out of your head, the whole terrible experience out of your heart, and let it get cold. Let your article get cold, let the comments get cold, come back to it. Now, read your article, make notes of things that you would change yourself. Oh, yeah, I don't like this. No, I didn't like that. Why in the heck did I say this? Stuff like that. Make little notes. Now, read your friends, your helper there, read what they wrote. See if what they wrote makes sense given what you just read of your article. Between the two, yourself, your article, and that person, rewrite your article. Now, either submit it back to the same journal that you got rejected from, or send it to another journal. Don't give up. Yeah. And there's what I call working with the action editor. Already talked about that. That can be, that alone can be very frustrating because it's another human being again. Only this time, it's not a friend who has no power over your article. Really, they're just your friend or somebody you enlisted to be a help to you. But the action editor has power over whether or not that article is going to go into the journal. And sometimes the things that they require are just completely aggravating. So I've had action editors, as I've read their comments, I realized they didn't know what they were talking about. They're not Gestalt therapists. Yeah, so consider what's happening here. If you submit to like psychotherapy or one of these other journals that's not a Gestalt journal, those people are not Gestalt therapists. They don't know what you're talking about. You have to convince them that you know what you're talking about, and in particular points where they're kind of hooked on something, they might be legitimately hooked on something and pointing something out that you need to change, or they might be hooked on something because they don't know what they're talking about. They're not Gestalt people. And then what you have to do is go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with them and teach them what you're talking about. You convince them that at least you have a reasonable point. You're in the ballpark for Gestalt therapists. You have to get them to a point where they will trust you on things that they don't inherently understand or maybe even believe. So it can be frustrating, but is it worth it? Yes, it is really, really worth it. Because if you get your article published in a peer-reviewed journal, you have really accomplished something. It's a big thing that you've accomplished. Big, big, big. Bigger than presenting at a Gestalt conference. I don't care what the Gestalt conference is. I don't care what kind of presenter somebody asked you to be. Getting an article published in an esteemed peer-reviewed journal is worth more than that. Why? You know, if there's just something about being published, about writing. So I've written articles for journals. I've written books. Go through the process, send it off, work with the editors, the copy editors, do the whole thing. Done. Now it's out there. Now time goes by, a little bit of time goes by. All of a sudden you start getting stuff coming back. Oh, somebody read it. Oh, somebody liked it. Well, that feels good. Not only did somebody read it and like it, but they're now using it. This will sound like a giant ego trip, but I do believe that we all enjoy being appreciated, recognized, and that's worth something. So when you write something and then people read it and say that they've read it and say that they've appreciated it, your world gets bigger. Your personal world gets bigger. You have friends, but now you have people who have read you. Your ideas become known. Yeah, they become known, so they become known for criticism as well. But yeah, why get involved writing? Why get involved in doing anything if you're not interested in developing something for yourself? So there's a Gestalt world and the advancement of the Gestalt world and the advancement of the research tradition, but there's you. And there's something about writing which is really, it's almost magical. So your influence grows, your world gets bigger, it helps other people. You have a life. I think that's writing this way is worth the effort. So that's it. That's basically the process. It's the need, the process, and where to invest your energy if that's what you want to do. So I am curious why you decided to do this, sit in on this webinar. What was there in this that for you that was interesting or thought you'd take the time to do it? Go ahead.
Yes, hello, and it's nice to meet you, and it's nice to be here.
Yeah.
My name is Aria, and I've been following your work, and the reason why I chose to sit here today is because Well, I've got an interest in research. I've been trained as a Gestalt psychotherapist. I'm getting my accreditation at the end of this month, and I've got my research proposal, which is an RCT based on it's a clinical trial and uses Gestalt psychotherapy and with the president's dog-assisted Gestalt psychotherapy. So I'm an ex-addict, so it is involved like dog-assisted Gestalt psychotherapy for sustained abstinence and recovery in opioid substance abuse comorbid with depression. I feel a bit anxious, so forgive a bit my English and the structure
Well,
of my language.
you're doing great.
Thank you very much. And I finished neuroscience, applied neuroscience at King's College London. So I know that well, I see many people, falling back on relapse, and most of these people are dying, and it could be me, And I decided to write this research proposal because I've learned from my dog. So it's all from my experience. So I saw the Dubrovnik conference and I did give in that research proposal there, and I'm presenting a poster there, in regards to the research proposal I've just mentioned. And also I was then invited to the Shanghai conference, and I'm going to present there as well. Well, a bit improved actually, and this is actually my dissertation to get the accreditation. So yes, I would like to get published. However, I don't know how this will be possible because this is just me. And as you probably understand, a clinical trial, and because neuroscience is involved there, so I'm using MRI and fMRI scans because I am studying particular parts of the brain. So this is evidence-based, so it can be replicable. However, it will cost lots of money.
Yeah.
And I'm like stuck. I don't know how to do it. I want people to hear this, and it's not because I'm ambitious, because something, it can be there for people.
Yes. I think that because of your background and your education and your interest, you would make a great primary researcher. In any research team, there is usually a primary researcher who's driving the whole thing, and their name and their most active team members are usually involved in the writing of the article. There could be more people involved in the actual doing of the research, but the writing of the article usually has a primary person, primary researcher, and then maybe three or more people. Sometimes you see like 20 names on this article, and it's ridiculous, but yeah. So you're right, though. What you're doing is fabulous. Your idea is fabulous. Now let me understand. You submitted a research proposal?
Yes. Well, I had to do my dissertation in order to complete my studies and get the accreditation from the institution I was trained here. So for some reasons, it was very difficult to do that because it's been really difficult these 4 years for me attending that program here in Athens, because I used to live in London and I had to come back to Greece. So my life turned upside down. So it was really difficult. So when I saw the conference at Dubrovnik, I said, wow, it's an opportunity. You know, I can write my dissertation, I can take it there because I already had the idea what I wanted to write about. So that was like a motivation for me. So, well, they accepted it, and it was like a draft, and it was not in the good state that I submitted the research proposal to Shanghai. So that's the difference. I'm presenting a poster in Dubrovnik, and I'm presenting a workshop in Shanghai. However, I don't know how to go about it. You know, it's just me, and sometimes I think that I've got an autistic brain, and you know, like I don't know how to go about it. You know, like I don't have a university. I don't have a PhD. I'm just working at my own private practice in Athens at the moment. So how am I going to publish this idea? How, for example, you probably already know that, you know, many people in academia, you know, they steal ideas. So how am I going to protect this? There are many questions and there are many concerns, if I make any sense.
You make sense. And you bring up other issues that are relevant. One issue is the funding of research. So that involves a form of writing called grant writing. And that's a whole other thing.
Yes.
And then there's assembling, especially because a project like you're describing involves many people and
Yes.
machines. And
Yes.
so,
if you don't mind, I went to the University of Crete, and the professors there, they just laughed. They said, "You're not going to do your own project. This costs lots of money." You know, I asked to volunteer as a neuroscientist student there, and they could not accept me because they couldn't run the labs because they didn't have money. So I feel stuck in Greece. And this is the reason, you know, like going to Dubrovnik or going to Shanghai, it's like oxygen to me. Someone might find something interesting in my research proposal, and I might do something interesting. You know what I mean?
yeah, I do know what you mean, and I think your idea is a good idea. So, do you want to talk about it after this? After
I would
this?
love to.
Okay, so I don't have a bundle of cash to give to you, but I have I have some understanding about how things work. And I also know that you don't necessarily have to have a PhD to get your research done. What you might have to do is to set aside your ego every once in a while, because it's just the way things are. So what would be an example of that? You're the person with the idea. You're the person with the energy. You're the person with the drive. You're the person with the experience, and you do have valuable education. You don't have that little piece of paper that says you have this particular kind of education. Okay. Get somebody that does have that. Get them on your team. You have to build a team. Anyway, we could talk about that. I can help
Yes,
you.
thank you. And thank you very much. Well, you know, the difficulty is that I am in Greece. Things have been really difficult and are difficult here in Greece. So that's how come and I go out of here, you know, because here, oh, you can't imagine, but thanks a lot. We can keep in touch.
Okay, so what if you want to continue to talk with me, then,
Yeah.
and this goes for anybody, you need to write me an email. And so let's see. There's my email right here.
I can hardly see it, to be honest with you. 'Cause I know
Okay,
no, that's absolutely fine. Got it.
you've got it?
Maybe you could put it in
Yeah.
chat for we could copy, for people could copy paste
Everything
it.
will be okay. Yeah.
Okay, good idea.
Yeah, please, because it's uncopyable from Zoom.
Okay, I'm going to propose something. That's what this team thing is about. You'll see that in a minute. Any other questions or comments or concerns or anything like that? If you do, because I can't see everybody at the same time, raising hands or anything like that. If you have something to say, just go ahead and say it. Okay.
I have
So,
one simple question.
yeah,
If we need only 2 RCT studies to be seen as a potentially evidence-based psychotherapy, gestalt therapy, as you said, as you mentioned before. Yeah, so why didn't we do it? It's only 2 different research. It's not so difficult.
it is difficult. Yeah, to get so okay. An RCT is a group design. So in order to have a sound statistical analysis, you need at least 30 subjects. So when you start off, because there's always an attrition, subjects drop out, things like that. For different reasons, they don't work out. So you really need probably to get 40 or 50 people in subjects in the research group. What I mean by that is the treatment group and another 50 in the control group. So now you have to get like 100 people that are willing to participate in your study. And those are just the subjects. It's easy to do if you have a captive population of students at a university. That's why most of these things are done by professors at a university. But if you're an independent Gestalt therapist working just down the street, who are you going to get? How are you going to get them? That's not so easy. So that's why those haven't been done, I think. And to be more clear, it's 2 RCTs. It goes by the disorder. So the best practice committee is looking for what's the best practice to treat anxiety, depression, trauma, on and on and on. So in each case, they're going to be looking for 2 RCTs for depression, 2 RCTs for, see what I mean? So, okay. Ultimately, in order for Gestalt therapy to be considered a viable evidence-based treatment, it's probably going to take 2 times 3 or 4 disorders, 5 disorders, whatever. So now you're up to like 10 RCTs. Yeah, if you had 10 RCTs, people would be going, well, Gestalts, I never thought so. What do you know? Anyway, let me share something because I'm going to have to get going here to get to the clinic in a few minutes. But let's see. Okay, so here's you've just had a real life example of an interest. Aria shared her interest, and that's the way it goes. I mean, somebody has a real fire for something, right? You have to have a lot of passion for what you're going to get going on for it to carry you through. And then you get going with it. So I am currently building a research team to conduct a two-step project around the effect of contemplative process on the work and the person of the psychotherapist. So what is contemplative process?
Sorry, can you say once again about what the research is about?
Can you see the slide? That's basically what I'm reading off of right now. I am currently building a research team to do a two-step project around the effect of contemplative process. Contemplation. It's not just having an idle thought. It's like an organized, specific kind of reflective process on the work and the person of the psychotherapist. So the one way to look at the contemplative process is to think of it in terms of Eastern and Western. Eastern thought behind contemplative process is commonly known, one form of it, as mindfulness. Mindfulness-based stress reduction was a program developed out of Buddhism, the contemplative aspects of Buddhism. Okay, I want to look at the Western version of the contemplative processes in the contemplative practices of people who practice out of a theistic model. So mindfulness is, in Buddhism, you could say would be atheistic, which doesn't mean against theism. It just means I'm not concerned about theism, not concerned about God, not relevant to what people do, that kind of a thing. Theism, a theistic contemplative process, is related to God. It is related to God as the person knows them. That's common to also 12-step programs in recovery. Anyway, so those would be probably the theistic contemplative processes associated with Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Was called Abrahamic religions. Not to get in, make a big thing about religion. It's the spiritual, it's the practices that are involved. So we'll take it in two steps. The first step is to create a research instrument associated with Western contemplative processes. And the second is to use that instrument to assess the effects of Western contemplative discipline on the work and the person of the therapist. How does a contemplative discipline affect the work a Gestalt therapist does? How does practicing, having a discipline, a contemplative discipline, how does that affect your life? Gosh, when it affects your life, then what happens? How does the therapist take that into their work? How does this all go together? So step one will be presented at the research conference in Rome in 2027. And step two will be presented in the research conference in China in 2029. Both will be published. So there will be at least 2 research articles that come out of this study. Money. So that issue of money came up. I don't have enough time to write the grant, find a grant that applies, write the grant, get it approved, all that kind of a thing. I want to get going with this. I want to do something that's feasible, that doesn't take a lot of money. I'll probably be funding it myself as far as it goes. So the team, as in many things in Gestalt therapy, is a team of volunteers. What do the volunteers get out of it? They get to learn what it is to be in a research project. They get to learn by doing. They get to learn research by doing it, being involved in it. And if they are part of the people putting the articles together, going through that process, then yeah, their name will be on the research article. If they want to join me in Rome and in China, they probably have to get some help with the funding of that. But you'd be welcome to do that too. And I want to tell you, those research, if you haven't been to the research conferences, they're really something. They're really, they'll energize you, and you meet all kinds of people doing research and get really into it. So that's it. You've got in the chat, you've got my email address. We currently have on the team 3 people from Poland. One
I'm sorry,
person.
I cannot see your email address in the chat. Have you copied it there?
Oh yeah, I did. No?
I can see, I don't know if anybody does.
I don't know. I mean, I wrote something here. Let's see.
Немає.
Is
No,
it
no one can
There it
see.
is. There it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, it's here. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. You have to punch this little thing that that puts it in the chat. Sorry. Anyway, yes. So there's the address. So currently on the team, there's 3 people from Poland. There's a person from China. There's a person from the United States. And it's just beginning. So what can I tell you about the experience of just beginning? The ideas about the instrument, what it is that we would create, there'd be all kinds of ideas as I will meet with these people and we'll start talking about it. So on and so forth. Any questions?
Є батарея тестів, чи це тільки буде формуватися?
Somehow I'm not getting the English channel then, I guess.
Sorry, it's my fault, my bad. So is there any test battery, or is it about to be formed?
Is there any what?
Like test sample and any like list of the tests that you are research tools, like tests that you are going to apply for that? Any like list of tests that you have chosen, or is it about to be formed?
2 things. One goal of step 1 is to create a test or a form that would be used, because I don't think there's a lot that are currently out there. And the other part of that question is there are other instruments, and it might be that the team decides that they want to have several instruments, not just one, so that we look at a mix of things when we do the research. But the first step is going to be focused on creating a specific instrument to be used around this idea of Western contemplative process. It might be something like, to what degree do Gestalt therapists engage in Western contemplative processes. To what degree? Yeah, it might be something like that. So that we already know, we evaluate, gosh, how many people are contemplative? I don't know. It's all very, very new. So I'm the one putting it together. I'm the lead researcher here, but I'm not coming out with a set product, a template that, you can say, oh, well, I like it, I don't like it, stuff like that. I understand. It would be easier if I just did that. But that would also not be very educational as far as the beginning of research project for people who want to learn about research. Your interest might just be, you might not have any interest in contemplative process. Your interest might just be, I want to learn about research. I want to become more a part of the research community. I want to be part of, I want to have my name on a published research article. Nothing wrong with any of that. That's your interest. Okay. That's what would bring you to be a part of the team. Everybody on the team is going to have their own reason to be a part of the team. The whole project will take at least 3 years. Because why do I say that? We're about a year out from the conference in Rome, and then it's 2 years to China. And after you present the research there, I suppose we could get published before we presented in China, but somewhere around there, it's going to be somewhere around 3 years. That's a lot of commitment, and people have lives to live, and they have programs that they're involved with, and so that's why I say some people will not be there at the end who are at the beginning. It's okay. That's the way it works. Okay. Speaking of work, I have to get to work.
Я хочу сказати декілька слів в кінці.
I'd like to say a couple of
Okay.
words.
Да, по-перше, дуже дякую за
So
цю
first,
лекцію і за те,
thank you
що
very
відповів
much
на мої питання.
for answering my
Ясніше і
questions.
розказав про
It became much more
всі
clear.
складності
And
публікації.
thank you for
І
sharing
да,
all
я теж
the,
вважаю, що вони
honestly, all the
поважні.
complications on the way to publish
Друге, я
an article,
хочу
and I think
сказати,
it was
що
it. And the second
я
thing,
був
I want
на
to
одній
say
поки
that
що
I've been
науковій
at
конференції по
one scientific
гештальт-терапії
conference on
Бімінгені,
Gestalt
і
therapy
справді
in
це
Birmingham,
неймовірна
and it's
подія, вона
really
дуже
an
надихаюча і
outstanding
цікава.
and very inspiring
Я тут з тобою
and interesting
погоджуюсь.
event. I
І
agree with you
нагадаю,
here,
що у
and
нас буде
I
перша
will remind
українська
that we will have our
гештальт-наукова
first
конференція
Gestalt scientific conference
осінню, і Філіп
in
також
autumn,
буде одним
and
зі
Philip
спікерів,
will also
тому
be one of the
запрошую
speakers,
усіх. Детальніше
and I
можна на
invite
нашому сайті
everybody
дізнатися.
so you can learn more about it on
І
our
останнє,
website.
третє,
And the last thing, the third thing
в
is
наступному місяці
that
буде
next
іще
month
одна лекція
there will be
про
another lecture
дослідницьку
about
мережу, про дослідницьку
research
ком'юніті,
network,
яку також
research
прочитає
community that
Філіп Браунел.
also
Тож
given
я
by
вас
Philip
всіх
Brownell.
запрошую і туди
And
також.
so I invite you
Дякую,
all
Філіп.
to listen to that. Thank you, Philip.
Thanks, Alexei. Thanks for putting this together. Thanks for your work in putting together the Gestalt Research Association. I think that if there's any national group of Gestalt therapists who could generate some RCTs, it would be in Ukraine. I just have that feeling. Somehow it would be possible. It would require that people cooperate across institutional boundaries, but I think it's possible. So, if you're joining next month, that'd be great. Good to see you, but I have to get to work today, and so I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Дякую.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.